The first time one of my buses crashed, I thought it was just an accident. But when the prophet and the elder who initiated me called that night and said, "This is the sacrifice the spirits have accepted. Now watch how your company will grow." And it was true. The very next month, I bought 2 more vehicles, and passengers flooded my station like never before. I was a transport operator in Ghana, but what no one knew was that every crash, every life lost on those roads, was blood poured out for my success, all under the direction of a man people respect and call prophet of God.
In this second episode of this confession, you will hear what will even shake you the more. A continuation testimony from a transport operator who reveals how his business was tied to the blood of innocent passengers, sacrifices demanded by a prophet and an elder through occult initiation. This is not rumor. This is not storybook fiction. This is a real voice, a real life, and a real warning about how dark powers are operating both in the church and in our daily businesses. Stay with us. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video, because what you are about to hear could open your eyes to the truth hidden in plain sight.
As I was saying, there was one particular night I will never forget. One of my newest luxury small buses had just been launched. It was full of university students traveling from Kumasi back to Accra after a campus program. Another crash. This time, the screams of those young students never left me. I could see their parents wailing on the TV news, holding up photos, begging for answers. The pain in their voices, it crushed me. But when I checked my accounts the next morning, hundreds of thousands of cedis had flowed in from new contracts. Blood for wealth. Death for power. The prophet called once more. "Come, Satan. My son, you are now deep in the covenant. There is no turning back. Each soul that falls is a stone laid on your empire. Do not forget, without the altar, you are nothing." That was when the full horror hit me. I wasn't just running a transport business anymore. I was running a slaughterhouse on wheels. Every engine that roared to life, every ticket sold, was tied to blood. And every time I tried to resist, the prophet's shadow loomed larger, reminding me that it was too late. My family celebrated our wealth. My workers celebrated the growth of the company. The public praised my success. But I knew, behind every boss, there were ghosts. Behind every coin, there was blood. And as the sacrifices continued, I began to wonder, how many more bodies would it take before the altar finally consumed me too? They say money brings peace. That success brings joy. But what no one tells you is what it means when your success is written in blood. By the time my company had become the most respected on the road, my soul was already in pieces. People looked at me and saw a man blessed by God. They envied me. They wanted to be like me. They saw the big house, the fleet of buses, the workers who called me chairman. But if only they knew the price. The dead had become my companions. At night, I no longer slept. If I closed my eyes, I was back inside one of the burning buses, the flames licking my skin, the cries of passengers filling my ears. And the worst part. Sometimes, the victims would call my name directly. "Chairman. Chairman. Why did you let me die?" I would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, my wife holding me, thinking it was just nightmares from stress. But I knew better. It wasn't dreams, it was judgment. The altar was collecting, and the dead were witnesses. Soon, it was no longer just in the night. Even in the day, I saw shadows where there were none. In the rearview mirror of my car, I would see a child's face staring back at me. In the office, I would hear whispers when no one else was around. And worse still, whenever I touched money, sometimes it felt wet, like blood was on it. I would drop it and wash my hands again and again, but the feeling wouldn't go. I started drinking heavily, thinking it would drown the voices. But the more I drank, the clearer they became. And then, the demands grew darker. One evening, his voice firm, commanding. "My son, the altar has taken much from the road. Now it requires one from your circle, someone close, someone that carries your own blood or your breath. Without this, your throne will not hold." My heart almost stopped. "Papa, please, not my family," I begged. He laughed softly, that eerie kind of laugh that chilled my bones. Who said it must be your wife or child? Think carefully. There are many ways to offer. A driver, a relative, even a loyal worker. Someone tied to your name. Someone whose blood the altar will recognize. That night, I couldn't eat. The food in front of me tasted like ash. My wife asked what was wrong, but I just shook my head. How could I tell her that the prophet who prayed at our wedding, the man she respected, was asking me to kill? Weeks later, one of my oldest drivers, a man who had served me faithfully for years, died in a mysterious accident. He was driving alone. No passengers. The bus flipped and crushed him beyond recognition. When I got the call, I broke down weeping. For the first time, I felt the curse of the covenant directly. It was no longer strangers. No longer faceless passengers. This was someone I knew, someone I trusted, someone who had laughed with me, drunk with me, prayed with me. His blood was now on my hands. That night, the prophet called again. His voice was calm, but behind it was a chilling authority. Now the altar is satisfied. You have sealed your throne. More will still come, but you will never be shaken. Rise, my son. Rise above all. But I didn't feel like rising. I felt like drowning. Because from that day, the torment doubled. I couldn't stand to be in my house. Every corner echoed with whispers. I couldn't sit in the office, papers would shuffle on their own, pens rolling across the desk with no one touching them. At night, dogs barked endlessly outside my window, howling like they were seeing things my eyes couldn't. And then it got worse, the dead began to follow me. One night, I walked into my bedroom, and there they were, passengers, lined up against the wall, staring silently. Their eyes hollow, their clothes stained with blood. I screamed, staggered back, but when I blinked, they were gone. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought maybe I was cursed. But then I remembered the prophet's words, blood is the price for true power. Yes, I had the power. Yes, I had the success. But I had lost my soul. And the most frightening part. A small voice inside me began to wonder if they would soon demand my own wife or even my children. Because with the altar, nothing is ever enough. By now, I was a man who looked alive on the outside but was dead within. My company stood tall. The buses lined the stations, painted bright with my name. Customers rushed for tickets as though my fleet was blessed. The banks respected me. Even politicians shook my hand. But behind closed doors, I was a prisoner. The dead would not leave me alone. Every face I saw in the day carried the shadow of those who had died in my buses. Sometimes, a passenger would smile at me, but in my mind, I saw them bleeding. I would walk into the office and see my driver's chair empty, and suddenly, I would hear his voice asking, "Chairman, was it worth it?" I began to avoid mirrors completely. Because whenever I looked, it wasn't just me staring back. Sometimes, I would see a woman holding a child, her eyes hollow with grief. Sometimes, a student in bloodied uniform. They would stare at me until I collapsed on the floor. Sleep became my greatest enemy. If I closed my eyes, I would find myself back in the middle of a crash. Glass cutting my face, blood filling my ears, screams piercing the silence. I would wake up shaking, my wife confused, sometimes crying with me. But how could I tell her the truth? That the man she married, the father of her children, had become a merchant of blood. And then came the next command. I was summoned one afternoon. I still remember how hot the sun was that day, but when I entered his compound, it felt like ice. His eyes glowed with something inhuman, and his voice carried no pity. "My son, the altar is pleased, but it is not full. The road has given enough strangers. The circle has given enough workers. Now the altar requires something stronger, something from your bloodline." My knees buckled. "Papa, no, please. Don't say that." He leaned closer. His breath was heavy with incense and something rotten. "You want your throne to last? Then the altar must drink from your seed. A child. a sacrifice that binds your name forever. I felt the ground slip under me. My heart hammered in my chest like it wanted to break out. A child. My own child. That night, I locked myself in my room, shaking. I stared at my children as they slept peacefully. Innocent. Beautiful. They trusted me. They loved me. And yet, the prophet wanted me to hand one of them over. From that night, the hallucinations grew worse. I could no longer tell if what I saw was real or just in my mind. Sometimes, I would see my children playing, and for a split second, blood would gush from their mouths. Other times, I would see them drowning, calling for help. I became terrified of my own house. I stayed away, sleeping in the office, drinking myself into numbness. But no matter where I went, the dead followed. One evening, as I drove home, I saw the road split before me. On one side, I saw my buses filled with passengers, but all of them were skeletons, laughing at me. On the other side, I saw the prophet, standing with a goat in his hand, its throat bleeding. He lifted his eyes and pointed at me. I slammed the brakes and nearly crashed my car. My guards rushed to check on me, but I told them it was nothing. How could I explain that I had just seen death in daylight? By now, I knew one thing: the prophet wasn't just a man of God. He was a servant of something darker, something that thrived on blood. And I had become his tool. And yet, I was trapped. Because if I refused, he warned, the altar would take me instead. Every day, I lived with that fear. Every day, I looked at my children and wondered, is today the day the altar comes for them?
This is not just the confession of a man, it is the revelation of a system. A system where blood is traded for power. Where prophets who claim to serve God are kneeling before altars of darkness. And here is the truth: there is no throne built on blood that will stand before the throne of Christ. From the very beginning, God made it clear, the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. Leviticus 17 verse 11. Blood belongs to God. It was never meant to be a currency for men to buy power, fame, or wealth. That price was already paid once and for all by the blood of Jesus Christ. Yet, what do we see today? Men and women calling themselves prophets, apostles, bishops, but behind closed doors, they are making covenants with marine spirits, ancestral gods, and demonic altars. And because the people see miracles, because the churches are full, because the money is flowing, they call it the blessing of God. But the Bible warns us in 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. Not every light is holy. Not every miracle is from God. Not every prophet who shouts Jesus belongs to him. My brothers and sisters, hear me well, the devil does not give for free. Every gift from him comes wrapped in death. This story has shown us clearly, the price of false power is always blood, always destruction. It may begin with strangers, with those you do not know. But the altar will not stop until it reaches your own home. And so, the question today is this: whose altar are you standing on? Whose voice are you following? Are you chasing signs, chasing miracles, chasing fame, and ignoring the word of God? Or are you standing on the finished work of Christ, who shed his own blood so no other sacrifice would ever be needed? Beware of altars that are fed by secrecy, manipulation, and fear. For these are not the ways of God. Choose today whose altar you will stand upon. And if you have been blessed, challenged, or stirred by this confession, I ask you, do not keep it to yourself. Share this story. Let others hear it. Let it be a trumpet call in the ears of those who are blindly following wolves in sheep's clothing. This is why we bring you these confessions, not to entertain, but to expose the darkness, and to call you back to the true light, Jesus Christ. So, take this message seriously. Comment, reflect, and share. Most importantly, decide today that your life will not be tied to false prophets or dark altars, but only to Christ, the true and living King.